So it all started on the last ride when Cruisin noticed that my shifter pedals were vibrating and shaking around quite a bit when I was just sitting there at idle at a stop. And he said, "Hey, you ought to tighten up that linkage and take care of that." So today I began to look into it a little bit.
So here's the problem. This thing is so loose that it kind of rattles even when it's in gear. And initially, I thought it might be able to be cured with just some adjustment of this rod, but the more I've discovered, that is not recommended, and in particular in this case because there's a problem. The problem is in the shifter linkage. It's pretty loose. Everything wobbles around. That's an awful lot of play. There's no play in this side. This side is very well secured in there. This side has a lot of play. And it's fore and aft and front and back laterally. So
it's almost impossible to get a look at what's going on with that lever that moves around. You know, the rod is attached to the lever very securely in the front and in the back. There's no slop between the rod and the lever. It's the lever and the shaft on which the lever rotates down below. And you just can't see that. So in this shot here, I got out my handy dandy little borescope analyzer that I usually use to look inside cylinders, like for the airplane inspections. And I managed to get that thing down in there. And there you're looking at the hub right there, and you can see how much that just wobbles on that shaft down there. And you can actually see that seal coming loose. That seal, I think, is popped out of the transmission, and that's why it's all filthy. That also explains why I've had a little slow drip in the garage of clear fluid. And if you look real close on the right side there, you can see that shaft, you can barely see the splines on that shaft. And there the shaft moves totally off the splines and back. It is not connected at all. And that little bolt right there is actually the adjustment bolt that's supposed to squeeze that thing on the shaft. I'll show you that here in a second. So I've got a 7mm Allen wrench down in there, or 7/32, I mean, and tighten that thing up. And the problem is it is totally bottomed out. It will not tighten any further. And that shaft is much harder than the lever, apparently. And I've read about that on the forums. And it just will not tighten any further. So I got a problem here. Let me show you a little bit more on the drawing. So here you can see what it looks like. Most of that's inside the transmission, but that shaft protrudes out from the transmission, those splines on the end of it, number 2 there. And then you can see that spline really fits inside the lever and is screwed down with that bolt number 8 that scrunches it around the splines. That's the way it's supposed to work. So let's look at the borescope again, just with a slightly different angle. In this case, you can see the spline shaft is protruding right out of the top there. And you can see I can move the lever right on off of the shaft almost till it hits the inner primary cover. And on that side, it's nice and clean, but it clearly moves left and right, fore and aft. It wobbles all around, and the whole hub just will move right along the spline. It isn't gripped at all. Those teeth are all that's holding that thing and making it work. And down on this side, I think you can see the seal there that's supposed to be inside that transmission protruding out. It looks to me like the seal is totally out, which is why all that's so filthy and full of dirt, and explains that little leak I've been having on the garage floor. So anyway, it looks to me like I've got a big job to do to get the whole primary taken off the bike to get at this thing.